Hi friends, want to eat a delicious brain-boosting breakfast like a berry tart or a berry souffle? If you are eating this kind of breakfast tart, then you would not be adding brain-boosting power as there is no blueberries, but 8 different food colorings and 31 grams of added sugars and natural wild berry flavor. Instead, I'll show you a little later how to upgrade your breakfast tart to a high protein and real whole food berry tart with real whole food like this, which can be pre-made into a tart or souffle. Have you wondered why processed food companies make things berry flavored? If you read the ingredients behind these berry flavored cereals, there's not really any actual berries in it, but the second, third, and fourth ingredients are various forms of sugar. And then the bottom half of the ingredients are added vitamins and minerals. This is not real food. You would be better off just starting your day with a multivitamin. The berry flavored market is a multi-million-dollar industry and growing because it tastes great. And people are now learning the power of eating real berries. That power isn't in eating berry flavored foods. Now, some people skip breakfast. Have you ever wondered exactly what time you should eat breakfast? Your metabolism is very different in the morning due to hormonal fluctuations and your biological clock called the circadian rhythm. Eating a lower glycemic index food at night is actually worse than eating a high glycemic index food in the morning. So if you like to eat junk food, it's actually better to eat that in the morning than late at night. And if you want to lose weight and improve your metabolism, then try to eat foods earlier in the day and avoid eating at night. One hormone made by your adrenal glands is called cortisol, and that rises early in the morning and peaks about 7 to 8 o'clock. Cortisol is an integral part of your circadian rhythm and should be the lowest in the beginning of your sleep. Now, without the cortisol rise, you're not going to feel wakeful. And people who have adrenal failure won't have that cortisol rise in response to a hormone secreted by your pituitary gland in your brain called the adrenal corticotropic hormone, or ACTH. This can be diagnosed by a real medical doctor through a Cosyntropin stimulation test. First, blood is drawn, and then a shot of ACTH is given. Then the blood again is drawn at 30 minutes and at 60 minutes after that shot to measure if an appropriate cortisol response went up. And people who have no response or a low response have true adrenal fatigue or adrenal failure or Addison's disease. People who have other autoimmune problems are also at high risk of developing Addison's disease. And some people can get Addison's from extreme situations like extreme blood loss, long use of glucocorticoid medicines such as prednisone or dexamethasone, or infections that attacks the adrenal gland. The most famous person who developed Addison's was our 35th president, John F. Kennedy. Apparently, he developed the symptoms of Addison's after his Navy boat PT-109 sunk. At the time, the story was he contracted malaria during his tour of duty, but people think that was a cover-up story for a more serious long-term chronic condition called Addison's. Like many diseases, Addison's was named after the person who discovered it, Thomas Addison, who described the disease as a condition of extreme lethargy, loss of appetite, stomach pains, and discolored skin. Addison's is a life-threatening condition unless you receive medications to make up for the hormones that the adrenal gland should be making, and that includes cortisol. Cortisol helps you to regulate your blood sugars as well as your blood pressure. Cortisol is a hormone that counteracts insulin when it comes to blood sugar metabolism. Cortisol actually raises your blood sugar by releasing stored glucose, whereas insulin lowers your blood sugar. Just like insulin, it's not good to have too much cortisol. And people who have excess cortisol, they gain weight, especially in odd positions like the fat that deposits between the shoulder blades. Cortisol also thins the skin. The combination of gaining weight and thinning the skin results in stretch marks, especially wide purple stretch marks over the belly. Cortisol also causes excessive hair growth, but not in the right places, so women can get a beard. It can also weaken the bone, causing osteoporosis and fractures. Excess cortisol also causes muscle weakness, especially in the muscles close to your body, your upper arms, and your upper thighs. And if you have persistently high blood sugars, then ultimately that translates into type 2 diabetes. And remember, Cortisol is also important for blood pressure regulation, so too much of it can cause high blood pressure. And this is why it's important to protect your sleep. Chronic sleep issues such as obstructive sleep apnea, insomnia, or working night shifts are all associated with higher baseline cortisol levels. Now, other ways to calm down cortisol is to exercise regularly, which improves sleep quality and reduces overall mental and physical stress to regulate the secretion of cortisol. And learning how to control your mental and emotional stress is also important in keeping your hormones balanced and cortisol low. Did you know that eating foods such as carbohydrates or even simple sugars can actually lower your cortisol level? This is one reason why some people naturally seek sugary comfort foods. But this can actually blunt the appropriate cortisol rise that should happen when stressful events happen in life. And like everything else in health, the wrong way to reduce a number like blood sugar can lead to poorer health. And this is because the body is super complex. And when you start your breakfast with a high sugary breakfast load, you don't just give yourself energy in sugar. You actually elevate a neurotransmitter called dopamine. And this is what makes you feel good. The more dopamine you release, the more you will feel good and the more you will want to repeat this process. This is how addiction works. And by giving yourself a bolus of sugar, you're training your brain to expect this reward pathway all day long to feel good. And this is similar to going to Las Vegas and winning money from a slot machine. You get that high, so you want that feeling again, the rush of dopamine, and you will pour in more coins expecting a big payoff. But obviously, Las Vegas doesn't work like that. So ultimately, you are unlikely to leave with a jackpot. In the morning, if you start it with a sugary breakfast drink, on top of that, you get a sugary pastry, and then you will really start seeking more sugary drinks throughout the day, as well as sugary snacks and sugary desserts. Ultimately, this leads to first fatty liver, and then you start gaining weight, and ultimately you will get metabolic complications like diabetes. So the way to get off of eating sugar is to reverse engineer how people made your processed food taste so addicting. And if you take a look at the ingredients of Pop-Tarts, you will notice that it's not just sugar that gives you that pleasurable feeling to repeat eating. I'm just using Pop-Tarts as an example, but you can go to your local supermarket, drugstore, coffee shop, or gas station and look at the ingredients behind the packages of your favorite muffins, croissants, donuts, other pastries, or even your cream cheese bagel. If it was as simple as sugar, then a bowl of granulated sugar or some hardtacks would be popular breakfast items, but they're not, because to make food more addicting or hedonic, a combination of sugar, fat, and salt is necessary. High sugary and fatty foods are generally also low in nutrients like protein and fiber. And now you may be confused that fiber is a nutrient since your body cannot absorb fiber. Well, that's only partially true because over half of your cells is actually not yours. It's made by your microbiome. And the majority of these microbes, they live inside your intestinal tract. So every time you eat, they will help you digest food. The more accurate term would be fermentation. Your food actually ferments in your colon. And if you drink alcohol like beer or wine, you know that that's a result of fermentation. You know that is a fermentation product of some sort of starch or sugar by microbes to make alcohol. When you bake sourdough bread, you are in fact a microbiologist and a chemist that transformed your flour into a fluffy, airy bread that was partially fermented. And every time you eat, this process actually happens within you because everything you eat ultimately will reach your intestine, your colon, if you don't actually absorb it. And the thing is, if you don't leave any food for your gut microbiome, those critters are not like your pet dog that will patiently wait for you to feed it. The microbiome are more like rabid dogs and will destroy your gut lining, that mucus layer that separates you from them. This is the beginning of leaky gut, ulcers, and inflammation. So it's actually always important to leave some leftovers for your gut microbiome. And this is why I always pack every meal with fiber so that my guests, my gut microbiome is well fed. And in return, they make fermentation products like acetic acid that activates AMP kinase to help me lose weight, and butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid that reduces inflammation, as well as your blood sugars. Butyrate is a powerful immune signaling molecule that works on more than just your immune system. It tells your liver not to make more sugar by dampening a process called gluconeogenesis, and it affects other hormones like the levels of PYY and GLP-1. PYY influences how much insulin your pancreas will secrete to talk to your muscles to then absorb more sugar. This lowers your blood sugars. GLP-1 agonist is the multi-billion-dollar hormone market that is helping people control their blood sugars and lose weight. GLP-1 is a hormone made out of your small intestine, and when you have more GLP-1, you tell your pancreas to release more insulin. You block the secretion of another hormone called glucagon that actually raises your blood sugars. You also slow down your gastric emptying, so food stays in your stomach longer, which controls the rate at which sugars are released in your bloodstream. And GLP-1 also tells your brain you are full. All of these mechanisms translates into feeling fuller longer, but your body already does this naturally if you eat the right foods. But medicines are designed to bypass these regulations of naturally balanced mechanisms that good nutrition already provides. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people have diseases that are so far advanced on the disease spectrum that they may need these drugs as a way to improve their fatty liver, improve their lipids, reduce their blood pressure, reduce heart disease, and reduce kidney disease. And what these drugs do for people is to help them lose rapid weight because they're so addicted to food. But when you don't eat, you're also not eating nutrition. And all medicines, they come with side effects, including nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, dizziness, indigestion, headaches, infections, and an increase in heart rate. Severe side effects include low blood sugars, pancreatitis, medullary thyroid cancer, kidney injury, and worsening of diabetes-related retinopathy, which is a leading cause of blindness in diabetics. And the thing is, GLP-1 does not cure these problems because if it did, then people should be able to stop taking it. These medications are designed like other medications, prescribed for life, just like cholesterol and high blood pressure medications. But even cholesterol and high blood pressure medications eventually fail. So people need more than one cholesterol or high blood pressure medication to control their blood pressure and cholesterol. And this is because these medications, they don't address the root cause, which is the food quality. John Harvey Kellogg, the masterminds of the Kellogg food industry, intended to create foods that did not elicit this pleasure pathway. And in 1906, his first creation, cornflakes, was invented. He was actually a physician, so he knew that fiber was important. So his second creation was an all-bran, high-fiber breakfast cereal. Now, we all know his company now is a leading manufacturer of processed foods, which ironically has taken the company in the opposite direction and created pleasurable foods with a combination of processed carbohydrates, sugar, fat, and salt. And now we need billion-dollar drugs to treat the addictions created by billion-dollar companies. So for me, I avoid these companies, and my goal is to eat high-quality food. But some of these principles are actually applicable to make not so tasty, high-quality foods into very tasty creations. It's kind of like taking the tricks of the trade to satisfy my food palate and yet protect me from being a patient on one of these multi-billion-dollar drugs. Your food not only gives your body fuel for the day, but it also prepares you for the challenges that you're going to be facing. And it does so by interacting with your hormones and neurotransmitters. And ultimately, this dictates our behaviors and whether or not you're going to seek certain foods throughout the day. So I try to eat high-fiber foods rich in hydration, phytochemicals, proteins, as well as low in saturated fat and added sugar and salt. And this is the foundation of how I created this berry tart and berry souffle. Now, even though they look like two very different foods, they come from one basic recipe. So both of these foods can nourish your tummy with antioxidant-rich proteins as well as fiber. Now, here are the ingredients. The prep time is 10 minutes, and you can literally eat it as soon as you put it together, or you can take an additional step and put it in the oven to make a warm breakfast. Now, take this basic recipe to start either the tart or souffle. Now, in a container or blender, put a block of tofu in. And I usually will rinse my tofu and break it apart so it's a little bit easier for the blender. Then I will put in soft dates. If your dates are too hard, you can soak it in a liquid before you put it in. My dates are a little bit smaller, so I put a little bit more. But if you have medium-sized dates, then probably 8 is enough to sweeten the tofu. Now, of course, the more dates you put in, the sweeter your breakfast will be. And if that's what you need to initially train you to eat the rest of the ingredients, then I think that's okay. But just try to reduce the amount of dates and use the minimum amount that will get you to eat this. And this is because the more dates you use, the more calories you're going to make this breakfast. So if you're actually ready to go for a walk or run after breakfast, then it's probably not going to be a problem. But if you're going to the office to sit, then you may not want to increase the calories in this food. Now, after you blend it, you can always put in more dates if you need it sweeter, but always start at the lowest amount that you think will do the job. Over time, when you reduce the sugar, you will notice you will require less sugar to allow you to enjoy your food. Then I grated the zest of 2 limes, and I squeezed in the juice of one of those limes through a strainer to catch any seeds. Add cocoa powder and a cup of strawberries and blend until smooth. Now, if you put more strawberries and they're sweeter, it can actually replace some of your dates. And when you're all done, it should come out looking like ruby chocolate cake batter. So if you want this dessert to solidify or to be warm, then line a round container with parchment paper. I basically sort of measure how much I need by putting the container on the parchment paper, estimating it, and cutting it to that size. Now, I diagonally cut 4 corners because this is a round shape. And if you just stuff in the paper, you'll have a lot of wrinkles, which could also be a design for your tart. I just did this to have less wrinkles on the sides. Now, if you have extra, I would cut that off because sometimes that parchment paper can burn when you put it in the oven. This tart has a crust. In a container or a Ziploc bag, combine 2 soft pitted dates and a 1/4 cup of walnuts. So pound the nuts and the dates together so they form kind of like a Play-Doh texture. And when it gets to that texture, just spread this dough evenly in your container. I usually will make it thinner because it's really caloric. This reminds me of a Chinese walnut candy I used to eat as a child that has this gummy-like texture. Now, I loved it. I found it actually recently in a Chinese supermarket a few months ago, and I read the ingredients. It's more than just dates and walnuts. They actually add extra processed sugar, which I try not to eat, since that is the easiest way to gain weight. Now, my rule for sugar to prevent me from gaining weight is to never eat sugar that is lacking a fiber casing. So I will eat whole dates, but I really wouldn't eat date syrup. And I will eat beets, but I won't eat sugar made from beets. Now, after you've lined the bottom of your container with this crust, pour in the batter. You're actually done, and you can eat this, or you can heat it up just a little bit so that you have a warm breakfast tart. And when you heat it up, it'll dry your batter enough to solidify it to retain its shape so that it doesn't look like batter. So I pop mine in the toaster for about 20 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit just to make this berry tart. So far, we made a low-calorie food. Each date is about 66.5 calories. So if you used 8, that would be roughly 530 calories. The block of tofu is 350 calories. So together, this is roughly about 900 calories. And the crust, however, is another 130 calories for the dates and about 130 calories for the walnuts. 1 block of tofu can make about 4 to 6 tarts, depending on how thick you want your tart. Let's say you make into 4 servings, and each tart would be roughly less than 500 calories, which is not bad for a high-protein omega-3 breakfast. Now let's decorate your tart. This is actually my favorite part. First, let's try to make some roses out of the strawberries. Now, if your stems have pretty leaves, then I would actually leave that on because those leaves are actually edible and it adds a pretty green color. Strawberry leaves are rich in vitamin C, antioxidants, calcium, vitamin K, iron, and ellagic acid. But if your strawberry leaves are a little bit old, then you may want to take that out because it doesn't look as pleasant. And if you're eating on your own, then it really doesn't matter as long as the leaves aren't rotten. But if you're making it for someone else, like your children, then it's actually important to make healthy foods look appealing. Now, to make the rose, you can start at the bottom of the berry, aim a knife away from your hand, and just make tiny little cuts in the straw. And what you want to do is to rotate these cuts all the way around your strawberries so it can peel back and look like a petal. Then you want to make these petals at different levels so it kind of resembles a rose. Now, you may need to practice this a few times, and it's okay if you make a mistake. I'm pretty rusty because I haven't decorated for a long time. And if you accidentally cut out some of the petals, well, that's okay, just save it. I'll show you how you can transform your mistakes into beautiful decorations. And when you don't tell people, nobody will know the difference. So this is what mine look like. And it sort of looks like a flower. So when you're done, put your strawberry flowers and petals aside. If you baked your cake, first let it cool and then take it out and put it on a nice plate. Now, if you lined it with parchment paper, it'll come out pretty easily. And now that it's dried up a bit, and because of its high protein, it can retain its shape, so you can remove the parchment paper. Now, really, you can decorate this any way you want. It is like a blank slate. And I'm going to follow the perimeter and make a blueberry fence. And if you're using frozen blueberries, remember to wash them first. Now, they do make kind of a mess because they're melting. So they may not look as neat, but they will still look just as delicious. Now, I try very hard to eat blueberries every day because they actually do boost brain power and can delay brain aging by 2.5 years. Now, you know the saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Well, maybe that's because you're not giving that old dog blueberries. This study had participants who were in their mid-70s, and they gave them blueberry juice daily. And those who drank blueberry juice improved their memory compared to those who drank the fake blueberry juice. And it's not just in old people who would benefit. All different ages, including small children, improve their learning ability if they regularly eat blueberries. Now, what do blueberries have that is so special? They are called flavonoids, and it's not just found in blueberries. They're also found in strawberries and many other berries. Now, the specific flavonoids high in berries are called anthocyanidins, which have been shown to improve cognition in experimental studies, including this nurses' health study that started at Harvard in 1976 with over 16,000 participants who were over 70 years old. And in 1995, they began measuring these participants' cognitive function or their memory in relation to their long-term diet. Now, nutrition is very hard to study because nobody just eats one thing. And there is no way to lock people up for the long term and feed them only certain foods to see what happens. The Nurses' Health Study now has over 280,000 participants focused on the health of women. Now, if you're eating on your own, you probably won't mind what it looks like. Really, just eat your berries with this tart. But sometimes I have noticed that I have to work on presentation to get my people to eat my food. I had put so much effort into making the rose that I'm really going to make this my centerpiece and put it in the middle of the tart. Now, I really strive to eat a lot of brain-boosting, powerful foods. And I also simply just love the taste and texture of fruit. So I'm going to put the rest of the blueberries on this cake around the rose so that it will be surrounded by brain-boosting blueberry marbles. Now, I didn't actually bake all my batter to add another layer of texture on this tart. And you can just save some of your batter, or you could just use a batter that's stuck in your blender. Put in a couple of spoonfuls of the batter in a Ziploc bag so you can squeeze it out like frosting to decorate your tart. So I like to fold the opening of the bag so it doesn't get all dirty and sticky. And then I'll put in 1 or 2 spoonfuls of the batter near the bottom of a corner. Now, it's best to remove all the air and twist that side of the bag so it has pressure to force the batter when you squeeze it. But before you do that, you have to cut a little hole at the end of the corner so that as you squeeze that portion of the bag, the batter will come out. And now I just decorated this to add another visual as well as texture, and it serves as a glue so I can put on more fruit. If you put the batter in the refrigerator, I'm sure you can put a frosting shaped topper at the end of the bag and it may retain a better shape for you. So these are just swirly patterns that I'm putting on so that I can put the strawberry petals that I accidentally broke trying to make the rose. So this is what it looks like, but you can put more decorations on it and give it more antioxidant power by dusting it with some cocoa powder. Now this is a small mesh that I had bought for my tea. You can use any kind of thin strainer to dust the cocoa powder on your tart, or you can just throw in a pinch of cocoa powder with your fingers to dust it. Now to make the blueberry souffle, add a layer of blueberries and minced strawberries in between the batter. So you would basically put the crust and then put the batter, and then you would layer on berries and then another layer of batter to cover up those berries. Now, if you want to decorate it, put some berries on top before it goes into the oven. I bake this at the same degrees, 350 degrees Fahrenheit, for about 20 minutes or until the outside looks a little bit drier. And remember, everything is edible. The whole point of baking it would be to give you different textures. Now, this is what mine looks like. And if you put this in the freezer for about 10 minutes, the outside will be firmer, cooler, and the inside will be warm and runny because of the fruit. And that's kind of the idea of a souffle. The souffle gives the experience of different textures and temperatures, which all help to activate your taste sensations without manipulating flour, fat, and salt. Now, if you don't refrigerate the batter, you will have a thinner, creamy texture. Now, please don't forget to let it cool down before you eat it if you're not going to refrigerate it. Now, I emphasize texture and decorations as being very important components to getting people to eat more healthy foods. Think about a candy bar and how they have different layers and textures that makes a candy bar taste good. Snickers is America's top-selling candy bar. It has a hard outer shell with a sticky inner filling with crunchy peanuts and a soft nougat. This one candy bar made $1 billion in sales in the United States alone in 2013. That same year, we spent $2.9 trillion on healthcare. And Taco Bell decided to expand its flavor wraps, and the FDA finally decided to ban trans fats. Approximately 141 million Americans consume 10 or more servings of chocolate candy in 2020. Each Snicker bars is 250 calories. And if you eat 10 of these servings, that's 2,500 calories. Each bar is 26 grams of added sugar, which exceeds the amount of added sugar recommended by the American Heart Association for women in a day. So even if you don't eat candy, if you are eating added sugar to your coffee, your teas, drinking soda, sports drinks, or eating it in sauces, dressings, and desserts, you can see how easily a person can eat 6 bowling balls or 57 pounds of added sugar over a course of a year. Now, those bowling balls, they usually go straight first to the liver and then to the belly. And this affects a multitude of different hormones. Now, if you eat Snickers, then you know it's roughly about $1.50 each. When I was a kid, I actually bought Snickers for a quarter. $1.50 is still pretty cheap compared to other foods these days. So have you ever asked, how can real food be so cheap? Well, if you look at the ingredients, it's not really real food. First, you have sugar, and then you have cocoa butter, and another ingredient called lactose, which is sugar, and then an emulsifier called soy lecithin. Now, you have more added sugar, corn syrup, and a pretty bad saturated fat called palm oil, and then more sugar called lactose, and chemicals called artificial flavors, and then salt. Now, I consider any ingredient that you can't find in nature and eat alone not real food. These are all food additives. Sugar, salt, fat, and emulsifiers are food additives. They are not real food, even though you can find some of them in real whole food. They are food extracts added to make things edible, which is very different than foods that are nutritious that add to your health. Now, we are adding so many artificial things to our food the same way we add buttons, patches, yarns, and clothes. These decorate clothes, but they don't function like clothes because you can't cover yourself up with a button. You can't just wear a patch. Likewise, these ingredients, they will not add to your health. And unlike clothes, where it doesn't really matter how you change your clothes or whatever costumes that you're using for Halloween, it doesn't affect your health. But food does. Whenever you eat it will have an effect on your health. If you eat the right food, you get healthier. And if you eat the wrong food, you get sicker. You get more stress. There's really no neutral food. Foods are either an asset to your health or a tax to your health. And the wrong foods, they double in tax in the short run and in the long term. And when you buy food, you're literally paying for that upfront, and then you pay potentially on your health tax. And then ultimately that adds up in healthcare costs in the long term. And this is why I'd rather spend more upfront to pay for a better quality food than to have to pay for medical care expenses. Now, if you want a healthier version of that Snickers experience, open up a pitted date, put a few peanut halves. It'll probably hold roughly 3 peanuts or 6 halves, which is 15 calories. Then dip that whole thing in your favorite melted dark chocolate. Freeze it, and you will have a delicious recreation of a healthier version. Now, I made this a few years ago, and I put them in paper candy cups and brought them to a party. It was a great hit. Now, these smaller proportions can take the willpower out of controlling your appetite. And if you want to learn more about that, watch the next video.